All right, gang, we got a special show today. We've got Hall of Fame podcaster Rob Greenlee here. He's got a new partnership with StreamYard. That's right. One of the top executives in the podcasting industry is getting together with the leading live streaming browser-based app to open new opportunities for creators. It's very exciting, and he's got the details he's going to share for the first time. It's not breaking news, but it is the exclusive details, so it's sort of breaking news. What do you say we do a show?
It's time for the StreamLeader Report. Discover the hottest trends in digital media. Here's your host, Ross Brand.
All right, thank you, Jody, and we are live on 100 TV. This is the StreamLeader Report, and we're not going to waste any time because we want to get right to our guest. And so I'm going to give an introduction, and we are going to get going and find out what is happening with the new partnership with StreamYard and Rob Greenlee. Rob is a podcast Hall of Famer. He was inducted in 2017. He's been a senior executive in the podcast industry. He's worked for a whole bunch of major podcast hosting companies, Libsyn, Podbean, Podcast One, Spreaker. He also worked for Microsoft and led the integration of audio and video podcasting into Windows Media Center, Zune, Xbox, and Windows Phone. Inside Radio selected Greenlee to their list of 2020 podcast power players. And if that isn't enough, he was also, I believe, the first radio show host to turn his show into a podcast. So he's been doing this for quite a while at a very high level. And the podcast space can sometimes be a bit contentious and egos and fighting and infighting. And I mean, in the 5, 6, 7, 8 years I've been around it, I don't think I've ever heard a bad word from anybody about Rob Greenlee. He's a host right here on 100 TV of the new show Trust Factor with Rob Greenlee. And, of course, for a long time, he's been hosting the new media show. It's both an audio podcast and it is live streamed with video and delivered as a video podcast as well. So he's got experience in all areas of new media, long history of partnerships with brands and creators, and we're just thrilled to be able to bring on the great Rob Greenlee. Rob, welcome to the StreamLeader Report.
Well, thank you, Ross. That was a very flattering introduction you did. Thank you very much. I know it's definitely a mouthful.
Well, it's only the truth, and it's got to be said. So, with that, tell us. I know you've announced on social and so forth that you're going to be partnering with StreamYard. Tell us what you're going to be doing and why we should be excited about this, what it means for content creators like many of the people who are watching right now.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of maybe back up a little bit and give
Sure.
a little bit of a high level view of what I'm doing, and just kind of make it clear. I have spent a lot of years in the podcasting industry, and this topic is kind of a come full circle kind of a topic for me, because video podcasting and video in this podcasting space has been a significant player for many years, especially in the early years of the podcasting medium. So my passion for video has always been there. It's just that when I started on the radio. So I was very focused on the audio side. And so this kind of movement that I've had of working for podcast hosting companies, which I've done for like the last 8 or 9 years, was a focus of mine for that period of time. And I think part of my move here and to partner with StreamYard is to bring kind of a renewed focus on video again. Obviously, with the changes and the things that are being discussed at places like YouTube. Now, to be frank about it, YouTube has had a significant influence in podcasting since going way back to like 2006, 2007, when they first got started. It was free video hosting, and that was a big factor back then. So, having content creators have access to free video hosting back in those days was a huge benefit. But there was a significant industry built around video podcasting back in that time frame between like the 2008 to 2010, 11 timeframe, even in the face of what YouTube was doing. There were whole networks that were built back then. A lot of them got acquired by big media companies. And it was a big deal. I mean, video podcasts in the early days were probably 30-40% of the podcasting market. And a lot of, younger people today don't really realize that. They do see possibly Apple with video podcasts, and there's a variety of other current podcasting apps that support video, but it's not talked about very much anymore. And one of the reasons is because of the hosting challenges, just like what it was in the past. I mean, it is a little more expensive. It's definitely cheaper now than it was back then to host a video podcast. But this convergence is really what I'm talking about here, is that, now with Twitter actually getting involved in this, we're seeing what's happening with like a Tucker Carlson, whatever, using Twitter, which has some irony too, because Twitter as an entity didn't really have a direct connection to podcasting, but the founders of Twitter actually created a platform called Audio, which were early competitor to Apple in the podcast distribution space. So Twitter has a strong connection to podcasting over the many years, and many don't realize that as well. But so that kind of movement and development of Twitter as a potential, and there's discussion of this happening. I don't know if it's real or if it's just kind of, an associated discussion because of what we're seeing with the success of video in platforms like a Twitter or a YouTube and places like that we're seeing this increasing discussion around, well, if you create a video show, why can't you take the audio from that and put it out as an audio podcast? And increasingly, I think this era right now is around convergence, because we're also hearing on the radio side more radio companies producing digital first for distribution to radio and podcasting. So we're seeing this kind of this convergence efforts, because people are going into a lot of effort creating compelling content, and what they want to do is create one version and make it available in all of the potential listening ways that are out there. That's the most efficient way. That's one thing about a downturn in an economy, creates a emphasis on efficiency and cost cutting. And I think this is a derivative of that as well, is that if you can reach more viewers, more audience in the most efficient way, cost-effective way possible, that's what you do. And I think that's really what this is all about, Ross.
Yeah. And so that's a really good overview, because when you think about where we're at right now, there's kind of two ways of looking at video podcasting, right? Mm-hmm. There is the technically accurate way of looking at it, which is it's distributed to podcasting apps, those that do offer video podcasting through an RSS feed. And there's any sort of talk show with cameras that is uploaded to platforms, whether or not it is delivered and distributed through an RSS feed. I think for some creators, and certainly for the audience, the distinction doesn't make that much of a difference. And so years ago, we would have said, Tucker's doing a video, or Tucker's uploading a video. Now we say he's doing a video podcast on our thought of what a podcast is, from so many podcasters putting clips on YouTube and now doing full shows several hours long on YouTube and Spotify, is almost a video first, Not that the content is primarily video. The real value still comes in the conversation and the audio, but I think a lot of people are monetizing and getting a whole range of exposure on the video side, or by using the video to cut it up and market it across different platforms.
Yeah, and I see a growing discussion among experts in the space talking about this convergence and talking about maybe the best strategy is to create a long form video show, and then take that content, cut it up into smaller pieces, and put it out as an audio podcast. So the key difference here, and a lot of people have have said for years that the best content to put up on a video platform like a YouTube is 5 minutes or less, right? Was the strategy. But I'm increasingly hearing people, and I'm a big consumer of video on YouTube myself personally. So I'm seeing this firsthand myself, and this is why I'm coming to this conclusion that creating video first and then taking the audio out of that and doing whatever you need to do to the audio to make it a good podcast is maybe the key to this going forward as you look to the future. And that's why I thought a lot about StreamYard, because now granted there are other platforms that are doing similar things to what StreamYard is doing, but StreamYard is clearly the leader in this, of trying to create a terrific video experience on screen, and then also having the audio quality that goes along with it that every podcaster wants, right? The local recordings and but still having those overlays, just like what we're seeing on the screen right now. This quality presentation can be done in StreamYard with some creativity. And so that's really what it is for me. And having this converged strategy is the best of both worlds, because you can utilize it potentially in like a TikTok. You can use the content potentially in Twitter and Facebook and post. I mean, there's even new platforms that are starting to emerge that could be used as well, like a Rumble or uploading directly to Spotify. And since I'm not tied up with any hosting company anymore, I can really talk about these things, about taking your content and putting it in all of these platforms. And that was the other big reason that I kind of broke away from the hosting, was that I wanted to be freed up to talk about all platforms and to embrace AI technology and to embrace platforms like StreamYard that are kind of creation platforms, but they're not distribution platforms typically. So, once you start talking about live, that's kind of a different conversation. But most of what we're going to see is that live will be a good connection to community, creating some more dynamic, interaction with community. But the on-demand is going to bring in the volume of audience and listeners. But we may see a resurgence in live as we see this as well. And that hasn't played out in the numbers entirely quite yet, but who knows, what could happen as we look to the future. I just want to be in a position where I'm embracing at the cutting edge of this medium, which I've always done.
Right. Talk about a little bit about what this means for, say, the average StreamYard user who may use it to live stream but doesn't have an on-demand presence or doesn't distribute as an audio podcast, but also what it means for the podcaster who hasn't thought maybe about using video, or thinks it's too complicated or it's too hard, or I can't get the quality of audio that I need, when in fact, really right now, StreamYard has pretty much everything you need with local recording and separate tracks. But talk about a little bit about what it means for the StreamYard user and also for the podcaster, this convergence and what you're going to be doing with StreamYard.
Yeah, I think I have to be really frank about this, is that it is additional work to be a two medium type of a distribution kind of program. I mean, it does take thinking about the audio side and thinking about the video side, which oftentimes people will recommend that you start out one or the other. But the problem is that when you don't think about both at the beginning, then you get in this kind of mindset that you're one or the other, right? And that's one of the things that I think about a lot, because I'm going through it right now with my own show, and this is one of the big reasons why I wanted to get a show like on 100 TV is to go through this, feel the pain, feel the process myself. Now, granted, I've been doing a live and on-demand video podcast, a true video podcast. It's downloadable and all that stuff through an RSS feed and an audio feed for many years. It's called the New Media Show, and that's live every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. But that takes really some discipline. It takes focus. It takes additional work to get that done. I'm not going to blow smoke at you that this is all easy and it's not requiring work. It does take some work, and then I do believe that the AI tools that we're starting to see emerge should really help with the time it takes to do some of these things. Now, the challenge is that is the AI tools going to give you the output that you want? That's where the human review is always involved here, and that's one of the things that I'm going through as well. And we're starting to see in the podcasting industry a growing level of adoption of AI technology in the post-production as well as the publishing process, creating show notes, creating titles, creating segments of programs. And so we're seeing increasing amounts of AI technology come into the space, and then also
like a new one every day.
right. And then sound optimization, sound sweetening that's kind of built in Dolby, and there's increasing numbers of new platforms, and I'm getting involved in some of these platforms too that are creating spatial audio opportunities or ways that you can record your audio or do your show anywhere and still get studio quality audio. So that's kind of at the cutting edge of where this is the convergence, how technology is going to help bring efficiency, and then also how technology can improve and increase the quality.
Yeah, so I think, you're going to be a tremendous resource as well for StreamYard users in terms of which of these new AI and new audio and so forth technologies really are the ones, narrow it down for us so we don't have to try all 50, because you're on top of it. I know our friend Gage Vandentop, who is the co-founder of StreamYard, is really thrilled to have you and work with you on this partnership. And he says, Rob's deep understanding of the podcasting and new media industry is unparalleled, and his passion for empowering creators resonates strongly with our own values. That's Gage Vandentop, the StreamYard co-founder. So I know StreamYard's excited. I know you're excited about the possibilities with StreamYard. Let's talk a little bit more about video podcasting. You kind of got into the development, kind of how it came together, some of the issues there. I feel like it's just exploded recently. Now my feeling is television and smart TV has a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
But maybe that's because I'm such a late comer to smart TV that it wasn't until like a year or so ago that I actually had a smart TV. But I find that I watch almost exclusively video podcasts on YouTube on TV. I think they're more interesting than new shows. They're more in depth. They're more controversial. They're more fun. It's not 3 minutes and out to a commercial and bring on the next guest. And, it's really like long form digging into topics at a very deep level. And I think, you were saying earlier, like the old thing was always do 5 minutes on YouTube, but post your podcast on the RSS feed or upload the full video somewhere else. But YouTube 5 minutes, I don't think so anymore. I think there are people who are becoming breakout stars on YouTube, maybe even having opportunities to move to TV if they wanted to, through doing excellent long form content that people want to see.
Yeah. Well, I still think that there's a place for shorter form content. I know I have
Mm-hmm.
a lot of videos that I published into YouTube over like a 15-year time span that I was adhering to that short form stuff. Like I found that the most popular over the last 15 years has been those 5 or 6 minute videos. But I do think that things have changed.
Right.
I'm increasingly seeing more successful podcasts that are more in the 30-minute range, that are out there, and that same approach applies to the audio side too. I also think that shows that are longer on the audio side tend to do better as well. So I think that that's where these things are starting to converge, is that I think that the audience, if they are thinking that the video in like a YouTube is a podcast, they're going to have the same kind of expectations of the content that they've had with the audio side, which has
Right.
typically been longer, right? And I think we've started to see this shift. I know my personal consumption on YouTube is typically shows that are over 30 minutes usually. I mean, it seems like most of the shows in there are, if they're less than 20 to 30 minutes, that's unusual these days, at least the shows that I watch.
Right.
So that puts those shows in a terrific position to be also audio podcasts. So
Mm-hmm.
when you produce that content, you just have to keep that in mind. You have to keep in mind, well, what's the visual element to this as it matches up with the audio side, right? So when you show something visually on the screen, it's probably a good idea to verbally describe what's on the screen, or apply the context of what you're displaying to the screen, because you can display a lot of content on the screen in a short period of time. And that's one of the reasons why people felt like 5 minutes was equivalent to like a half hour
Right.
audio
Right.
show, because you could visually present content too. And it does make intuitive sense. But as we see shows like what we're doing right here, these could easily be converted into an audio podcast and there wouldn't be any issue at all.
Right.
So it's just trying to think from a convergence standpoint. And I've reached out to, over the years, I've reached out to lots of very popular YouTube creators and said, have you thought about putting your show out as an audio podcast? And most of them over the last few years have said no, because why do I need to do that? I'm getting 80,000, 100,000 views on my video. Why do I need to invest some time into the audio version of this that may get less than that, right? So it's kind of this chicken or the egg kind of thing, the cart before the horse, or whatever struggle. And that's kind of why I'm kind of thinking more that when you start a new show, you need to think convergence first. And that might put you in a mindset where you don't have that dichotomy, that you invested all your efforts in creating this video version, and you talked about YouTube in your video,
Right.
and you basically promoted it just video, but the audio side was neglected.
And I guess you don't know really where you're going to take off, because there are plenty of
Right.
people who are doing both, and they'll say, I love to record live. I love the engagement with a small
Yeah.
community that's passionate
Yeah.
and shows up every week. But it's the downloads of the audio where,
Right.
10,000 people listen, and it's, a couple hundred maybe watch the video.
Yeah, it goes the other way. Right. I agree. The other interesting thing about this, and I've been thinking a lot about this over the last few months, is what we see in YouTube is an interesting parallel to what we're seeing in podcasts from the standpoint of discovery, right? People have been complaining for years about it's difficult to be found in as a podcast, and it is true. To some degree, it's true if you look at it from a certain perspective. Search has typically been really bad in all of the podcast listening platforms. So when we typically have grown shows by word of mouth, right? Which doesn't really require very complicated search capability. But you contrast that with how discovery happens on YouTube around an algorithm, right? And or how it positions itself to feature content to you that you are more favorable to, right? It sees what you've listened to or watched, and it will give you more of that, right?
Right.
So but that has never really existed in podcasting. So that's the interesting thing about the success of these video shows that are on the platform that think, well, I don't need audio podcasting, right? I'm already getting success here. So if we had a similar type of approach to discovery over in audio podcasting, I wonder if we would have greater opportunity for shows going forward. I know this may be a controversial position because, that advocates for proprietary platforms. And though the reality is we do have proprietary platforms in podcasting, I think a lot of people focus on the open nature of RSS as kind of like all podcasting is kind of open, which most podcasting is open, but most of the listening is happening in proprietary platforms that just have done a poor job of helping listeners discover new shows.
Right. I mean, Apple's picking which podcasts it puts up front, and it's new and noteworthy, and who it features when you join in. But that's not based on who you are and what you're listening to. They're just picking and saying, okay, we want to feature these today, or what have you.
Yeah, so I've had to take kind of the company line on these topics. I'm being very frank about it, just because I'm from the podcasting industry, and I know how people talk about it in the industry. It's this RSS open focus type of thought process around this medium, and we're going to protect that, which I think it's possible to do both of these things. I just want to put pressure on the audio listening platforms, the Apple and the Spotify or whatever, to do a better job around helping listeners discover new content that is maybe a little more parallel to what we've seen on YouTube.
So let's talk a little bit about AI, because like I said earlier, there's all this new, in the wake of ChatGPT, there's just all this new features coming out and new apps and different ways that, I guess you take your audio or your video and you drop it in, and all of a sudden you've got transcripts and you've got show notes, and it's formatted and shorts and 10 tweets and all this stuff. Have you seen any that you say, wow, that works so well? I'm not doing my show notes from scratch, or, I'm not cleaning up the transcript or whatever. I can take it and go, and this is going to save me hours or minutes at least. Like, this is a huge savings of time, and it's capable, and we're there.
Right. Well, let me first off say
that's a mouthful. I know it's a long question.
There. Let's just kind of dispel the whole concept that somehow AI is a magic solution right now. I don't believe it is yet. It is making significant strides. There's platforms like Autopod and Capsho and a variety of others out there that are developing, right? And they're getting better all the time. But I firmly recommend that anybody that uses any of these tools takes a look at the output before they publish it, right? Because I don't think that the AI is quite good enough for you to solely trust it entirely. I think we've got probably another couple of versions of Chat GPT or whatever tool that this is connected up with before we really get there. And I do see the day coming when you can create an episode, you can publish it, you can do all the editing, you can do segments, promotions, all that stuff with an AI, and you can trust it. I think that the AI really needs to know you at a deep level before it can really do that. And it needs to be based on your content as a majority over using content off of the artificial intelligence platform, right? So it needs to be unique to you, unique to what your show's about. But I do think that the tools will continuously improve, and you will have to do less pre-publish editing or changes or whatever to the output. And that will usher in a new era in content creation for us. It's going to get back to, well, who created this content, who owns the content. That's the other big legal question right now, is that anything that's outputted by these AI platforms, there is no legal ownership to it currently, because an artificial intelligent algorithm created it. So who is the author, right? And each output is slightly different, right? So each time you run these AI platforms, they will give you different output,
right?
And which makes them unique. But then me as the content creator of my podcast, I don't technically have copyright ownership of whatever the output is.
Right, right.
So that's one of the challenges a lot of people don't think about. Plus, there is a danger that these search platforms may be able to identify Chat GPT content and punish it somehow, or say it's not authentic, or there isn't copyright associated with the publisher around it, and somehow that limits it. So I think we have some challenges that we need to get through before we can be 100% confident that these tools are going to deliver on what their promise is.
Well, I think maybe you have to separate out those tools that you use after your broadcast has been recorded, like, you know, something that's audio optimization, transcripts, coming up with social posts, or
it can help.
That's taken from, that's taking word for word or close to it from your content that you've already created. It's more, I think, on the input side when, you're seeing people advertising like, oh, all you need to do is ask ChatGPT a question and you have an ebook that you can sell on Amazon, or you have your video is done, put it up there and, just read the script or whatever. That's, I think, where the danger lies. On the output side, if it speeds your time to market for getting clips out and things like that, that's not so bad.
No, it's not. It's not. But I've seen these things too. Is that sometimes the algorithm doesn't want to pick the clip segments that you would, right? So if you rely on it to pick them, it may or may not be what you want, but that's something that you have to be willing to either accept or reject. That's where the podcaster comes into play again, and having
played around with those, I found that it's easier to take something that isn't clipped exactly right and go in and edit that, but it's already got the captions, it's already been sized properly and all. It's still far easier than starting from scratch, right?
Right. It's a total time-saving shortcut, and I think that's where the value is right now.
You sort of also have to be willing to live with industry standard, right? Because at some point, everybody's stuff is going to look somewhat similar if it's all coming from the same sources. Instead of going into your editor and going, let's see what I can create with this. Let me put my fonts and my look onto it.
Yeah, and I've also seen if you use multiple products with the same content, right? Mm-hmm. If you use multiple services, they will compete with each other, right? So I've actually outputted something in Chat GPT. And then I put it into like a document, like a Google Doc or something like that. And my Grammarly will just tear it apart. So, which is another AI tool. So you have this risk of, if you use multiple tools, what's it going to do to the content that's generated?
Right.
Right. It may make it better, but it could also change whole sentences or change, so you have to be careful of this stuff too, because it is extremely powerful, especially if you do this around transcripts. Right. You do this around transcripts and you run it through a Grammarly, it's going to tear it apart, right? And it's not going to be your transcript. It's going to be something that an AI wrote.
Now, I guess, the way I use Grammarly is I look at each thing and I do it manually. It's like a suggestion to me. Yeah, so I have the opportunity to say, no, I don't need an Oxford comma or whatever. But it is
totally
competing tools.
Those comments, I agree.
But I do think that because people are using, Bing's search engine that's AI and using ChatGPT like they used to just use Google, I think the importance of having transcripts or show notes becomes more important because you want to be the primary source for information about your podcast, about your guests, about what you talked about, when you talked about it, rather than, it either not appearing or some third party comment about your show or something becomes the, the thing that the only thing it can find, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it is important it's been that way for a long time on the show notes, especially if you have a website too. I
Right.
mean, you can take that content and put it out, and get, hopefully some Google juice, but there is a lot of question about, well, what is the future of search? Is it going to be as relevant as we look to like the next couple of years with these AI bots and these chat bots that are going to not so much, we're going to increasingly not search for information. It's just going to be fed to us. And that's, if we have a question, we'll just ask these AI chatbots and they'll give us the answer, right?
Yeah.
Versus having to do a search, keyword search, have it pull up a list of 10,000 results, and then we have to sift through to find the honest, non-commercial information.
Yeah. We're talking with Hall of Fame podcaster Rob Greenlee. He's the host of Trust Factor here on 100 TV, and he's got a new partnership with StreamYard, and we're very excited about that. Beauty Bubble is in the chat. She says the complete ease in bringing your audience into the conversation is powerful for a new podcaster finding their voice and vision. From day one of my favorite things about StreamYard is how easy it is to get a guest on, that you can send them a link. They don't need to create an account. They click that link, they're in. You have layouts already set up for you.
Awesome.
You don't have to crop, their video and all that stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I think she hits the nail on the head with that for newer creators.
Yeah, I think I struggled with it many years ago of thinking about doing video, and I started building out my own home office studio back during the pandemic, back in 2020 and 2021 is when I started to really build out my home studio with studio lights and teleprompters and big monitors, and I've always had the fancy microphones, but it's just kind of having that cutting edge, like a Stream Deck kind of a device, which is kind of what you need to do if you want to do video these days. And I know a lot of creators go crazy with multiple cameras and they go nuts on the graphics and have a lot of cool stuff happening. And that's the other thing that we haven't talked about is the elevation of the video productions that we're seeing happened around, YouTube video podcasts of sorts, is, the sets and the multiple camera shoots now that very big shows that are still considered to be podcasts are using. Like what we're doing here is maybe a little old school from the perspective of some of these content creators that have created, almost like television sets that they do things on. And it does create a different kind of feeling in the production. It definitely, and I've been, it challenges me. I'm sure it challenges you to think about, well, how can I do it? But, it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to add a multi-camera shoot in my office here. What was it going to be like this side of my head and this side of my head?
Right.
Or, I could probably get one that's above that shines down on, so I could write on a piece of paper or something like that and show it on the screen or something. I mean, that's what a lot of people do, but it's just interesting, the creativity. And I've been increasingly thinking about starting up a show that I had on YouTube for many years called Behind the Wheel. And it was literally me behind the wheel of a car. Maybe isn't the safest thing to do. But creating videos of what the experience was of driving various cars and vehicles in the early days when, electric vehicles were just kind of getting started and hybrids and things like that. And that's a lot of the content that I was creating, was talking about the latest tech and car technology. And now I own a Tesla, and so now I'm going to start talking about Tesla, but I know that there's like thousands of people doing video on Teslas out there these days. So you have to stand out somehow. So what am I going to do to stand out with my videos now, like I did many years ago?
Well, they were insanely popular, those videos.
Yeah. But they were very raw and real. They were like me in the car, me talking about what my experience with the car was, various parts of the car. So if somebody was looking at buying like maybe a used, hybrid or something like that, they could go back and look at my review of my car after 57,000 miles or something like that. What broke down, what didn't, what worked well, what you have to think about with these vehicles. And I'm seeing that happen around Teslas too. I mean, I see a video up there about what's my Model 3 like after 100,000 miles. So, and it's like, yeah, I mean, people like to watch that stuff.
There's so much great content out there. There really is. And it's a tough time, though, for creators in a lot of ways. I think right now. What advice would you give to experienced creators who maybe feel the economy isn't on their side, or the algorithm isn't on their side, or just, hey, I monetize this, but maybe I'm hitting a rough patch now that things are, inflation's up and, spending is down or whatever. Like, what would be your advice to them in this time to either rejuvenate their content or to take a break, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult time for a lot of reasons, and probably the biggest one is people's resources to invest in getting, I believe, which is increasing expectations of a certain level of quality and a certain level of presentation. I think it is a challenge. I mean, I've always, for most of my podcasting career, I've always recommended people just start out wherever they are with whatever device they have, and do the best they can, and then slowly progress and upgrade and improve what they're doing as they learn. Because I mean, a lot of the stuff, and I'm doing the same thing right now. I'm learning, and I'm trying different things, and I don't have a high level of expectation of the results quite yet, because I don't feel like I have what I've done. And I think content creators need to think like this, is that they need to just start where they are, get going. This is a terrific opportunity. I believe a terrific time to start a new show, start a new effort on your part to take a leadership position in whatever industry or topic that you want to cover, that you have a passion for, and start building something for yourself, and see where it goes. I mean, not every show is going to work, and not every show is going to be successful, but it can be successful. It depends on what your goals are. It depends on what your expectations are. If you keep your expectations rather low, then you're less likely to be disappointed, and you give yourself a break in realizing that you're learning, and that you're striving, and you're improving, and you're trying to make the best choices with what you do with your show. And you may not have all the answers early on, but this is what I had to go through with my radio show that I started back in 1999.
Right.
I was never on the radio before I did that show. I walked into a radio station with 3 other people that I knew that had a common passion about the internet and technology. And we started doing a show on the air, and we made a lot of mistakes. But believe me, I learned a lot over those 7 years of doing that show. Got it on the XM Satellite Radio Network for a couple of years, and got it on 15 broadcast stations, and was streaming through a partnership with Microsoft back in the early days, and really kind of built a large following for that show. And it was a very exciting time. And I've seen so many podcasters get started, and they put their heart into it, and it completely transforms their lives. And I see that happen. I'm seeing that happen with YouTube creators too. But the options now are just there's so many places to be, and it's hard. I mean, there's like Rumble, and there's all these new platforms that are
Right.
popping up that are competing with YouTube now, that are, valid places to be. And Spotify's taking video uploads as well. So it's a very it's a
Right.
very challenging space if you want to be everywhere and you want to be maximally successful.
Is there a common thread when you look at the shows that you've seen over the years that catch on, that grow, that
Yeah.
develop an audience, that have staying power? Are the your own and others that you've seen across different platforms and mediums? Are there certain common threads that the successful ones seem to have?
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of common signs. I used to work for a company called Podcast One down in Los Angeles that worked with a lot of celebrities. And one of the things that experience really showed me is that one's personality and one's way that they speak to people and the kind of body language, and which wasn't as big of an issue back then because that was mainly all audio,
Right.
um, but it's how you speak to your audience and how you talk to them is so important. And I know I'm always trying to improve on that as well. In how I speak and the words that I used, I use a lot of you, but not as much on the we side, just
Mhm.
as a conceptual reference, because podcasting has always been seen as an intimate medium.
Right.
And so that's always been a big part of success is, since it is an intimate medium, you have to really speak to someone like you're speaking to a friend in a coffee shop, right? And be genuine and be someone that. And one of the reasons why I'm doing the show, the Trust Factor show I'm doing, is because of the values behind that, which is being authentic and being as real a person, and having empathy for others and things like that. Those are the common threads that I've seen in successful podcasts, is that they have skills that connect with others. They have leadership skills that build community and connections within a community, and are not self-centered 100%. Now, granted, success breeds a certain amount of self-centeredness. I've seen that a lot as well over the years. But just being open to others and being open to learning and being humble with your audience too, and realizing that many of your audience members are probably smarter than you, and they have valuable input that they can give to your success, and you have valuable input to give to their success. And it's kind of a cultural thing to some degree. Why podcasting has really caught on is that it is that connection that we are so desperately missing right now
Right.
in mainstream media and other forms of media that are, I believe, dying because of
Exactly.
that lack of that.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why podcasting really took off too was the ability to listen offline. So you could take it with you. You had your iPad, you had your Zune, whatever you had, and
Right.
your iPod, your early smartphone. Before the bandwidth was really great for streaming content and listening or listening, playing and having it streamed to you, or having it a video quality wasn't that great on your smartphone or your pre-smartphone device. And so you developed that relationship with the podcast host because they were going everywhere with you. They were in the car with you. They were
Yep.
at the gym with you. They were going for a walk. They were like anywhere you got on a plane, anywhere you go where you're not connected, the podcast was the company. And if you enjoyed the person, then you didn't mind either long form or binging on several episodes to catch up. And I think something's changing about the way we consume, but I do think with the smart TV, as we discussed earlier, it's sort of circling back with these long form video podcasts, because without the phone and that constant, going to the next short and the next short,
Yeah.
because the phone is really all short form now. It's
It
quick,
is.
it's short form. Hit the thing again and see if we get one that's funny. See if we get one that's interesting.
Yeah,
right?
it's not a big screen experience.
Right.
That's
And the long form again on the big screen, because you're not constantly, searching YouTube on the big screen isn't the same as searching it on a phone, right?
no,
So
it's
you
not
want to find something
right,
that you can leave on for a while. So it's
right.
really interesting how these trends kind of flow,
Well, actually, I think it's beginning. I know it's done it to me in my life. It's replaced mainstream media. I mean, these long form shows are on topics that I have an interest in, that are easy to connect with. The algorithm that YouTube has delivers those new programs to me, even though sometimes it's not a perfect match, but it comes close most of the time. And so it creates an environment where you stay in the app and you keep consuming like you did with broadcast television. But and this gets back to the topic of my show, the trust factor. The trust in mainstream media is just evaporating.
Yeah.
Increasingly, because they are proving that they are not authentic, not real, try and manipulate. Advertising is another component of this, that the podcasting industry has always been a lower advertising load medium, and that fits with people's desire to get less pitchy content and more valid, authentic, real type of topics. Now, granted, that doesn't preclude the opportunity of doing like storytelling and true crime and all this stuff also with alternative mediums as well, like a YouTube. But I also think that's one of the big reasons why we're seeing Spotify shift to supporting video too, is that they're seeing these same trends, right? And Twitter is talking about offering more video content on their platform. These trends that people are changing their consumption patterns. It's a generational shift that's happening right now. People just don't trust the mainstream media, and they're not willing to pay for it either. That's the other end of it, because it's extremely expensive to get cable television.
Right.
So, right.
Do you think, I know we've seen some podcasts like Hollywood and TV production companies and so forth look at some successful podcasts or podcasts that have great stories and say, can we make this into a movie? Can we make it into a TV series? Do you think that there will be talk podcasts that will eventually TV networks will use or TV stations will use to fill time, because it's engaging content and it's probably as inexpensive a content as you need, because all you need is to get people a camera and in front of a microphone, and basically they do the show like we're doing it right now. I mean, maybe they have a little more fancy studio, maybe they have a higher grade camera, but in general, it's the lowest budget content, and at least on YouTube, it performs better than some of the high-produced content. Do you think we're going to see a time where, channels are going to say, we have an opening from 10 to 11 on Sunday night, let's just grab a podcast instead of producing our own show or running an infomercial that we're not making that much money from?
Yeah, I do think that's going to ultimately happen. And I think part of the convergence that we're seeing on this is bringing that opportunity more and more to the forefront, as these larger shows develop and how they build like sets like a lot of the TV networks have had for a long time. I think where the threat really is around these cable channels. Are they going to have to start thinking more on demand than linear? But I do know that there's others in the podcasting industry that are thinking more and more that linear is what the future looks like for. No, I mean, it's a valid question.
I'm laughing because I've been
no, I know
considering
that's
it and playing
too,
around with it, and
but you're not alone. Ross on that.
And it's also what platform that it works on. Does it?
Right.
Maybe it doesn't work on a YouTube, or maybe it requires building up to a certain point first. But I do think you look at some of these ad-supported video platforms and fast platforms for video, and people do enjoy the linear experience, and they enjoy the choice of being able to watch on demand. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. I won't go into it any more than that, but you can certainly opine.
Yeah, I've been a little disappointed in the lean back linear experience on YouTube. It oftentimes will play what I'm interested in playing, and then if I don't change it right away and go to a new video, it will just automatically pick something else to start playing, right? And 9 times out of 10, it'll pick a piece of content that's like 10 years old or something like that, or 5 years old or 2 years old, and it's not picking the latest episode from my subscription list, right? Which is a little surprising to me sometimes. And that gets back to, even YouTube isn't delivering on a linear experience that's compelling quite yet. And I would think that would be a pretty minor tweak to the algorithm to get it to play, an episode of something that is like more recently published and that's part of my library of subscriptions.
Right.
And that would promote this idea of linear experiences where I could just hit play, sit back, and it will play through the top most recent episodes of the subscriptions that I have. But I haven't had that experience with even YouTube yet. So if they make that adjustment to the algorithm, that it may usher in a new era of linear experience.
Yeah. Well, it's great talking with Rob Greenlee. We could do this all day. The news is that Rob is going to be partnering with StreamYard in support of content creators and with outreach to podcasters and video creators. It's a wonderful partnership. Rob's been a pioneer in the podcasting world, has a ton of experience with video podcasts, and StreamYard is the app. Most of our creators here on 100 TV are using StreamYard to record their shows, both their video shows and their podcasts. So any type of convergence there between 100 TV and StreamYard, we have to be happy about. And certainly StreamYard's remained a very stable, easy-to-use platform for all these years. And I'm excited for you, and I'm excited to see what new things come from the collaboration and partnership with StreamYard.
Yeah, I'm excited for it too, and it's also likely that there'll be a couple other partnerships that I will announce over the next month or two as well. That and kind of the common theme is on the content creation side. So that's the element that I'm pursuing in my kind of time in the online space. Going forward is really trying to get at the cutting edge of where this medium is going forward. And I appreciate, Ross, you having me on your show. It's great.
Well, we're going to have you back for those other partnerships when they come down, but you're going to be coming back weekly anyway, as we do StreamLeader Report as a panel. We have different members of the 100 TV community on, and we discuss some of the issues of the day, and we hope you come back and join us next week. For my guest, Rob Greenlee, thank you so much for being a part of 100 TV today and choosing us to share the great news about your collaboration with StreamYard. I'm Ross Brand. This has been another episode of StreamYard Connect. Thank you so much for being a part of it. We'll see you again next week, 1:30 p.m. Eastern, only on 100 TV. Take care, everybody.